If you had asked me 2 months ago if I would have been in this situation, I would have told you you were full of shit. No way. How would I suspect my wife Jennifer of cheating on me? Before this evening is over, she gets the biggest surprise of her life when I hand her copies of the divorce papers, which will be officially handed to her at work on Monday. It wasn't supposed to end like this. We've been together 5 years, married 4. What kills me besides the cheating is that Jenn, as I call her, has talked about starting a family. So why is she flirting with one of my best friends? Maybe all the attention she's gotten the last couple years has gone to her head. Jenn is the proverbial ugly duckling who's now a swan. Hi, she's not really an ugly duckling, she was never ugly, but you probably get the point. By the way, my name is Ronald. My friends call me Ron. I'm a bit of a nerd, but I played soccer in high school. He's a freshman, but I played all 4 years and spent enough time on the field to earn an honorable mention from the university and the respect of my teammates. My classmates in high school recognized me as the most likely to succeed. I had several girlfriends in high school and college, some of whom ended up with me, and some of whom I broke up with on my own. I met Jenn when we were both graduate students at Northwestern University's night school MBA program, the Kellogg School of Management. I was working full-time in the IT department of a downtown bank and taking classes in the evenings. Jenn worked at Boeing headquarters in Chicago. An MBA degree would help our careers in many ways. To make a long story short, I noticed a young lady in one of my finance classes. At the time we met, and while we were dating, Jenn was overweight, probably 15 or 18 pounds. She wore glasses and was not what you would call fancy dressed. Jenn came from a small town in the Midwest with a population of less than 1,000 people, then went to a state college not known for its style or sophistication, so fashion didn't matter until recently. Jenn may not have been a sophisticated big city girl, but she's smarter than anyone I've ever met. She was hired at Boeing right out of college, thanks in part to her knowledge of Japanese. Turns out her father had served in Japan for the first 12 years of Jenn's life, and Jenn knew the language like it was her native tongue. Jenn seemed pleasantly pleased when I asked her out as we were leaving class. I picked her up at her apartment on Belmont, and we had a nice dinner on Rush Street before heading into the living room to continue talking and learning more about each other. Turns out our mutual favorite place in the city is the Art Institute, and the following weekend we spent the whole Saturday strolling through the galleries and comparing what we liked and what we didn't. Since that Saturday, Jenn and I had spent most of our free time together. Between work and school, our free time was pretty limited, and it was even more limited by Jenn's volunteer work at the children's hospital near the school. Jenn would come to the hospital and read to 1 or 2 minor patients at least twice a month. When I asked her why, she explained it to me. My younger sister had been diagnosed with cancer. I was 15 and understood nothing about death, serious illness, real loss. I was just starting to socialize with boys, and I was pretty self-centered. I think my parents tried to shield me and my siblings from the reality of Jessica's situation. As a result, I spent less time with Jess than I should have. When she died a year later, it was like a wave hit me. It took my family a couple years to come to their senses. Mom and Dad stayed married, but it was intense for a while. Now I read to these kids and imagine it's my sister. I didn't know what to say, so I just took Jenn's hand, she continued. I know it's silly, but it helps me. I pray that Jess looks down on me and realizes how terribly sorry I am that I wasn't with her more in the last year. Jenn started sobbing. I hugged her and couldn't help but feel honored that Jenn could share something so intimate with me. We had only been dating for a few weeks when she shared this. The other thing Jenn did to make me feel close to her was to help my little sister. A month after Jenn and I started dating, I brought her home to introduce her to my mom and Sarah. My father, Owen, had left us 10 years earlier. Cape was 7 years old and I was 15. Owen, I never call him Dad, had left Mom after she told him about an ongoing affair he was having with his secretary. Mom had caught him once before, and after Owen promised to stop seeing the woman, they tried to keep the marriage together for the sake of the children. A year later, Owen got caught again, and then just packed up and moved out. Owen continued to send a monthly check for child support, as required by the court, but I rarely saw him after that day. It didn't matter much to me. Owen was rarely around before he left. I can't recall him attending more than a few school or sporting events. I think Mom and Cape had a much harder time of it. Anyway, Jen met Mom and Sarah. Jen and Kappa instantly hit it off. From that day on, they acted like sisters. Both were smart, cocky, a little reserved, and needed a little confidence to reach their full potential. Sarah watched Jen transform into a confident, successful businesswoman, and it seemed to inspire Sarah, something she needed. Sarah enrolled at Iowa State University and plans to eventually study medicine. Jen and I continued to date, and our relationship continued to grow closer. We had an exclusive conversation. I made it clear to Jen that infidelity was an instant deal-breaker, considering how I had watched my mother be nearly destroyed by Owen's betrayal. Jen agreed, and everything about Jen made me realize that I could trust this woman with my heart. Our first time was sweet and in a not-too-hot kind of way. Neither of us were virgins, but neither of us could be called experienced. After our first 2 lovemaking sessions together, Jen did what she always did when she was tackling a new challenge. She bought 2 books and brought them to my house. She showed me the Kama Sutra for beginners books and some other practical guide. "Ron, I can tell you I'm not rocking your world. There's no excuse for 2 highly intelligent people not having the best sex in the universe. I have every intention of fucking you to death." Jen opened the first book to the first page and proceeded to do just that. So now, lovemaking competed with shared interests, friendship, and intimacy. My life was complete, and on the first anniversary of our first date, I asked Jen to marry me. Jen said yes, and we were married 6 months after that. It was during our engagement that Jen's physical transformation began to take place. For whatever reason, it was important to her to lose 10 pounds or more in time for the wedding. She had her eye on a wedding dress and couldn't imagine herself in it if she didn't have the body to make it look good. Jen's time at the gym wasn't wasted on either of us. I started lifting weights again. It was the first time I had gotten serious about lifting weights since my senior year of high school, and it paid off. My coach insisted on measuring me before I started, and my biceps were just over 30 centimeters. 6 months later, they were close to 38-centimeter guns, a term Jen used. There was a hint of 6 dice and a good start for some pectoral and broadest muscles. Jen was losing weight, and a month before the wedding, a coworker brought her to an upscale salon on Michigan Avenue. Jen's unchanged ponytail was replaced by a businesswoman's hairstyle with a tone-on-tone melange. Little by little, Jen was transformed. I'll never forget the moment Jen walked down the aisle of the church arm in arm with her father. Instead of Mendelssohn's Wedding March, a string quartet played Pachelbel's Canon. Jen lifted her veil, and I saw the most beautiful woman in the world. From the moment we exchanged vows and said "I do," I was the happiest man in town. We both graduated, got our master's degrees, and both advanced in our fields. Jen had to travel abroad at least once a month, but that was okay. It was only for a week, and to be honest, at that point in my life, it seemed like a good thing. I spent the week socializing with my guy friends. I never had any reason to suspect Jen of cheating on me when she was out of town. Whenever Jen met me at the door, whether it was after a week-long trip or after a day at the office, she would kiss the top of my head and say, "Ron, I love you." You see, that's the thing. I never suspected anything because Jen and I were compatible in almost every way. Our marriage, and especially our sex life, was what I would call perfect. I once heard that if you put a penny in the jar every time you and your wife made love during the first year of marriage, and then took a penny out every time after the first year, there would still be a penny in the jar when you celebrated your 50th birthday. Things were different for Jen and me. Jen was returning from one of her trips abroad, and we were spending the weekend in bed. Empty Thai delivery boxes, empty pizza boxes, and empty wine and beer bottles were stuffed in the trash. I loved this welcome home weekend. Jen stayed naked for 2 whole days. Watching her strut around the apartment in her festive Eve costume was unforgettable. The other 3 weekends a month we spent the normal way, with friends and family. We went out to dinner and dancing, sometimes to a show, sometimes to a museum or other special event. Life was good. A month ago, things took a turn for the worse, and it seemed to come out of nowhere. Looking back, I can't remember anything that changed our marriage. Was I blind all along? Did I miss the signs of my wife's infidelity? Could the woman I trusted with all my heart be so duplicitous? A month ago, that's when I began to suspect my wife of cheating. It all started with one little inconsistency. just like you might hear in any tavern where a guy is getting drunk when he says to the bartender, "Well, it started like this. It was the day I got a bonus at work for completing a project to install a new server system at the bank. The system had gone live 2 months before. We had been collectively holding our breath for a month, but everything was going according to plan. No Murphy's Law glitches to bite us in the ass. Senior management was thrilled. It would save the bank millions, and they decided to reward me and my staff with a nice bonus. It was a surprise, and I wanted to share the news with Jenn. It was one of those lovely spring days, and I decided to take a couple hours off, stop by her house to take her out to lunch. I was practically floating on air. Half a block from the house, I saw Jenn walk out the front door, accompanied by my good friend and college roommate, Carl Morris. They immediately got into a cab, and I rushed to catch them. I tried calling Jenn on her cell phone, but she switched to voicemail. Since their houses were close by, it didn't seem unusual, but why wasn't she answering her cell phone? I tried her cell phone 20 minutes later, and it went to voicemail again. I went back to my office trying to make sense of it all, but as soon as I entered the bank lobby to use the ATM, all hell broke loose. If you can believe it, 2 idiots tried to rob the bank. I mean, with some off-the-shelf software and a decent computer printer, you can forge tellers' checks and steal thousands of dollars, but these 2 idiots walk into a bank that has an alarm system, armed guards and cameras, wave guns around and act like John Dillinger. And even though they walk out the door with a bag of money, when they open the bag, a bag of indelible paint explodes, covering the money and the thieves. These 2 didn't even make it out the door. The Chicago detective was cashing a check at the time, and his partner was sitting in their car outside waiting for him. Between the 2 police officers and the bank security guard, both bank robbers were shot and killed as they exited the building. I was right there during the whole shooting. Who knew the gunshots were so loud? My ears were still ringing 3 hours later. Anyway, I had to spend some time with the 2 detectives, testifying about what I had seen. By the time I was done with the police, I was exhausted and in need of a drink. I went home and almost forgot about Jenn and Carl until she walked in the door. I sat in my leather chair and drank my second glass of beer. "Ron, why are you home so early?" "I had a hell of a day, Jenn. I needed a beer." "That's not like you, honey. And why didn't you return my call? I called you back when I saw I missed your call. It reminded me of missing lunch." "Well, Jenn, here's the thing. I told Jenn about the botched bank robbery and how I was 6 feet away from the shooting." Jenn's face turned white and she jumped into my lap. "Oh my God, Rob, you could have gotten hurt or... Jenn burst into tears and nearly squeezed the air out of my lungs. When Jenn finally calmed down, I had a chance to ask her. "I called you just before noon. I wanted to take you to lunch." Jenn looked, I don't know, different. "I'm sorry, honey. I've been in meetings all day. I haven't even had a chance to eat." Jenn just lied to me. Given Jenn's fiction about her lunch break, I didn't tell her about my bonus. So that was the first nail in the lid of the coffin in which the stinking corpse of our marriage rested. I decided to use some of the prize money to find out what Jenn and Carl were up to. Do you know how expensive private investigators are? The cheapest one I could find cost $300 a day plus expenses. I hired this guy. His name is Dwight Oldaneski, and he's supposed to watch Jenn for a week. It cost me almost $1,800, but by Thursday night I had a report. I met with Mr. Oldaneski in his office. "I've been following your wife for the last 4 days, and today she finally screwed up. At noon, she walked out of the Voeing building on Riverside with this man. Oldaneski showed me a picture. It was of Jenn and Carl Morris. They got into a cab just like you told me they did last time, so I was ready. My cab followed theirs. They got out at Palmer House on Wabash. I followed them into the lobby and they entered the elevator. That's where I lost them. But I have pictures of them entering the elevator and pictures of the 2 of them exiting the elevator about 50 minutes later. Shit. Son of a bitch. I couldn't help myself. I wanted to either curse or cry. I'll print out my report, attach pictures, and send it to you by Monday of next week. Should I send it to your office? Would you like me to keep following your wife? No, I'm fine. That's enough. The deposit you gave me covered the bill. I'll send you a receipt with the report. Yes, thank you. I walked out of Oldaneski's office like I was on death row. Never in my life would I have suspected Jenn of cheating on me, and with one of my best friends. The problem now was how to act normal until I knew what to do next. All week I had been trying to make lists of what to do if my worst fears were confirmed. I went home. Jen met me at the door as usual. I pretended I had a terrible headache and went to bed without dinner. I was in bed, just lying there with my eyes closed when Jen walked into the room. "Rob, are you okay? Can I get you anything?" "No. I just want to lie here with the lights off. The lights are making it worse." Jen hopped off the bed and turned off the light. "How about a cold washcloth on your head? Mom used to do that for me when I had a headache." Damn, why did she have to be so nice? Was it out of remorse? "No, Jen, please just let me lay here in the dark." Jen kissed my forehead and left me alone, closing the bedroom door. As I lay there, staring up at the damn ceiling, I started thinking about how I could get back at both Jen and Carl. Maybe it wouldn't happen this week or this month, maybe not even this year, but I would get my piece of meat from those two. On Saturday, I did something I've never done before. I accessed Jen's personal card. 4 separate hotel rooms had been paid for in the last few weeks. Now I was angrier than ever. Not only was Carl sleeping with my wife, he had the nerve to make her pay for the damn room. It had been a busy weekend at our apartment. I don't know how I handled it without letting Jen take over, but I kept my cool. My meeting with the divorce attorney was scheduled for Tuesday. Until then, I needed to keep my cool. What made it worse was Jen's attitude. All weekend, all she did was ask, "Ron, can I get you something? Do you still have a headache? Is there anything I can do to make you feel better?" Finally, Sunday night at dinner, she gave me some news. "Ron, you'll be 30 years old in 2 weeks. I made dinner reservations and a room for Saturday night. On your birthday, you will wake up next to my naked body and room service." That's it. That's how I was going to take the first stab at reclaiming my manhood. This is wonderful, Jen. I can't imagine a nicer way to spend my birthday. I kissed her. She won't see it. On Tuesday, I went to see a divorce lawyer. It would be a straight split in half, so the paperwork was simple, but it still cost a few thousand, another big part of my bonus. I kept my cool for the next 2 weeks. It was hard, and it got even harder given Jen's loving attitude. The day after my meeting with the lawyer was strange. Jen came out of the bathroom in the morning and she was completely dizzy. She gave me a killer kiss and scurried around the bedroom getting dressed. I paid special attention to her outfit, thinking her good mood was due to the fact that she was planning to meet Carl for one of their special lunches. I called her office phone at 12:30 and Jen answered the phone. "Ron, I was just thinking about you. How's your day going?" I mumbled something in response. I was so sure she wouldn't be there that it confused me. We eventually agreed to meet for dinner after work, and so it went on until the following Saturday night. Jen told me to pack light. I put on my suit and packed one casual outfit. Jen didn't realize that copies of the divorce papers were in my suitcase. Here's my plan. Tonight we'll have dinner. After dinner, I'll bring her back to the room. I'll beat the crap out of her, and as soon as she's ready to settle down and curl up to sleep, I'll pull the papers out of my suitcase and give them to her. I'll leave this room and her behind and start a new life. Someday later, after she feels the pain, I'll ask Jen why, and hopefully get an answer. Jen hasn't told me where we're staying for the night. That's a surprise. She said it like we had a great night planned. She didn't realize it. She called a cab. It picked us up and we drove downtown and stopped right in front of the fucking Palmer house. What a nerve that bitch had. Drove me to the same goddamn hotel where she's sleeping with my friend. I almost didn't get out of the goddamn cab. We walked into the lobby and she checked in. The bellboy took our bags. He took them into our room, and Jen and I headed straight to the restaurant. I felt dizzy, and Jen led me to the elevator to the second floor. I didn't realize there was a restaurant on this floor. My blood pressure spiked. How the hell was I going to keep my cool for the next few hours during dinner and sex until I handed Jen the divorce papers? I really loved this woman. Why was this happening? We walked down the hallway, then 2 double doors opened to my right. Surprise! What the hell? As if in slow motion, I looked at the people in front of me. Jen took my hand and led me into the room. The people seemed familiar, but what are Mom and Sarah doing here? They're standing there with Carl and his wife. Then I looked to my right. It's weird, but these 2 guys look like 2 guys I went to high school with. To my left were 3 of my co-workers with my boss. When about 30 people in the room started singing Happy Birthday, my brain caught my eyes. This is my birthday party. Jen was standing next to me, her arm wrapped around mine. Happy 30th birthday, love. She tilted my head up for a kiss, and everyone started clapping. It had been a great night. I met up with a few old friends I hadn't seen in years. I saw my coworkers and boss in a different light. It was nice to share this special day with my family and other good friends. Carl and his wife Yvonne came up to me and he said, Jen didn't think we could fool you. We've been planning this for months and thought for sure you'd figure it out, Yvonne added. Would have seen Jen's face when you kept calling her during our first meeting with the catering manager. She almost panicked. Jen and Carl got off the elevator, and the caterer and I were waiting, and Jen was like, What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I don't think she's ever lied to you before. Yvonne, still laughing, walked over to where Jen was standing, talking to my mother. Carl looked at his wife standing next to Jen. How did we get so lucky, Ron? I mean, look at us. 2 working-class kids. We have great jobs and, most importantly, wives who love and support us. I don't think there could be anything better than that. The longer the evening went on, the more ashamed I became of myself for doubting my wife's fidelity. About 2 hours after the party started, I opened postcards from the guests. Most of the cards contained gimmicks, such as a dollar bill. I opened the last card. It was just a black and white picture of 2 people kissing on the front. Inside, it simply said, I love you, and signed Jen, but there was a sticker glued to the left side. I held my gaze for a second. I had never seen anything like that before. On the end of the wand was a plus sign. And then it hit me. I looked at Jen, and there was anticipation on her face. That's when I realized I was the luckiest person in this big city. I picked Jen up in my arms and spun her around. I'm going to be a father, I told the crowd. There was cheering. It was crazy. Jen looked at me. If I'm anything like my mother, I'll probably gain a little weight with the baby. I'll probably look the same as I did 5 years ago. You mean like when I fell in love with you and asked you to marry me? Jen smiled. Yeah, just like that. An hour later, when we went up to our room, I was fairly sober. Jen went to the bathroom and I apologized. I'm getting ice, Jen. I pulled the divorce papers out of my suitcase and tossed them into the trash can in the hallway, tearing them into 1,000 pieces. Some secrets you're better off taking to your grave. This one will be mine. Well, I know there are guys who, for whatever reason, can never trust a woman. You're thinking, what a naive bore. His wife cheated, and he didn't have the baby. Turns out I had a chance to review the final party bill and these 4 expenses, all listed as various deposits for the event. And the boy Jen gave birth to just 8 months later, as my Sicilian grandmother used to say, she spit him out. Yes, Ron Jr. is my boy. I've learned a few valuable lessons. First, some women are worth trusting. They've just been raised right. And second, don't let the situation escalate. You got a problem? Discuss it. And third, you get what you pay for. Hiring the cheapest private investigator almost cost me my marriage. I finally took a closer look at the fuzzy picture of Jen and Carl coming out of the elevator that my private investigator took. Right there, to Carl's left, half hidden by a tall guy, stands Yvonne. Son of a bitch. Learning those lessons cost half my bonus, but ultimately not as much as it might have if I had handed Jen those damn divorce papers that day.
Thanks for hanging out and listening. If you liked the story, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Make sure to check out our other wild tales right here on the end screen. Catch you in the next story.